Well, after a 14th place finish last season, Bristol City are setting their sights a little bit higher this time around, but they're likely to lose star Alex Scott to the Premier League. How much money can they get for Alex Scott? Can they reinvest it wisely? And can they make further progress this season under Nigel Pearson? Well, to discuss all these things and more, I'm delighted to be joined by Fevs from Fevs Football and Annie Harish from Robins Talk. Good afternoon to you, gents. How are we keeping?
Good, thanks, Gav. You?
Yeah, very well, thanks. How are you, Annie?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, looking forward to getting into this one. Thanks so much for your time. Fevs, how do you reflect on the last couple of seasons under Nigel Pearson?
I think it's been 2 seasons of rebuild, basically, both kind of on the pitch and off the pitch. So certainly the financial situation has not been good, and I think all credit to the kind of senior people and the manager on the football side in terms of bringing those costs down and kind of avoiding FFP, really, which was, I guess, fundamental really to us not having to worry about things like relegation or anything like that. Typically, Bristol City in the past, when we've had these kind of periods, we've ended up having to rebuild in League One. So we've kind of done that quite successfully in the Championship without really any fear of going down, in my opinion, all ready for liftoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a successful couple of years from that perspective. Annie, Dave mentioned there the financial situation at Bristol City. Do you think that selling Alex Scott for big money, we're talking 25, 30 million possibly, how far is that going to go to ease some of the financial concerns that we've had in recent years?
Yeah, I think that's going to go, again, a huge step in the right direction. But to be honest, I think if you look at our window so far, we've signed Ross McCrory. We're being linked with Jason Knight. That deal supposedly is nearly done. So we can spend the money even without the guarantee that the Alex Scott money is going to come in, and that's probably been helped by the Antoine Semenyo sale in January, which massively again helped us. I think that basically was the financial rebuild over once we sold Semenyo, and now it's the time to really just help kick on and really push. But yeah, the Alex Scott sale is again going to be massive. But I'd take the Alex Scott sale and really properly reinvest it and give that money to Nigel Pearson. Really just try and improve the squad in many different areas.
How much, Dave, do you think Bristol City Board are going to be able to do that? Because presumably they'll want to keep some of that money back in order to rebuild in other areas like infrastructure and maybe paying off some of the remaining debt, possibly.
Yeah, I guess if he does go, and I think it's still a big if at this point, I don't think we'll deviate from the current plan that we're on of buying the types of player that we've currently either bought this window or been linked with, and hopefully about to make one more of, and that's those players of fairly smallish fees. I don't see us going out and spending 4, 5, 6 million pound on any player. I think that 25 million, if we get that, and he does go, will be all about spreading over the next few years and just keeping us on a nice sound financial footing. So I don't see us changing our plan at all.
So in terms of where the squad is going to need to be strengthened then, Annie, which of the main areas do you think you've got to look at?
Well, previously I've said centre midfield needs bolstering, and we've done that, highlighted Jason Knight. I think another centre-back is probably needed, just for squad depth. And also definitely a goalkeeper's needed, because at the moment we've got 2, Stefan Bajic and Max O'Leary. So probably definitely one more goalkeeper. And that's probably about it. Some people may argue we need an out-and-out number 9, but we've got Naki Wells, we've got Tommy Conway, got Andy Vyman, Harry Cornick can play there, Sam Bell can play there if needed. So we've got that utility in the forward region, which is massively helpful. Apart from that, I think we're fine in the fullback areas, and I think we're fine at everywhere else, really. So probably centre midfielder, get Jason Knight done, and maybe another centre-back.
I mean, the striker position's an interesting one, isn't it, Dave? Because Annie's quite right in terms of listing a lot of players, but I also feel like you've got Tommy Conway, who's on the threshold of his career. We're going to be hoping that he really kicks on and has a brilliant season, but we can't put too much pressure on him. And then you've also got Nicky Wells, who's probably coming towards the end of his career. Is there, if we're holding Bristol City to the standards of challenging for the top six, could it be argued that you're maybe a striker short in terms of someone that's capable of finding the consistency required at this level?
I think the argument's there, isn't it? I think we've got the right balance of players across that front three, and I think, if we kind of look at them positionally, we've got on the left-hand side, we've got Mehmeti and Bell. In the middle, we've got Wells and Conway. On the right, we've got Sykes and Cornick. But then you can also throw in the likes of Andy Vyman as well, who's, probably was signed however many years ago it was now to play as a centre forward. So I think he's another option there as well. I think it'll be interesting to see whether we stick with the kind of three as they're currently shaped up. I know Nigel in the past has said he quite likes playing with a two with one in behind rather than three strung across. But I don't see any signs yet, maybe pre-season or show us that, whether that changes or not. I think we'll still go for the kind of 4-3-3, will be fairly fluid in that middle three. So I honestly think we're okay. I think it's good enough on paper to challenge. I think much of it will come from what happens in terms of goals from other areas of the pitch. And we've said we've not scored loads from midfield, which is fair. And I think also, when Rob Atkinson got injured, whenever that was last season, we lost goals from set pieces. And in fact, the last few games of the season, I don't think we even put a corner into the box. We played everything short because we had no one. And I think that's one area that we've massively improved this season or in the summer so far. And that's with Dickey and McCrory, who are probably good for 2 or 3 goals each, hopefully, and that suddenly might bring you 4, 5, 6 points as well. So, and hopefully we get Rob back at some point towards Christmas, and that'll make a difference as well. So I think we are looking to kind of share it out a little bit. I don't think we're ever going to be a side that's going to go out there and spend X million on the notorious 20+ goal scorer. I think we do have enough goals amongst us across the whole of the team, though.
Well, let's hope that's the case. Annie, I suppose we've touched on Andy Vyman, but I find it interesting that 12 months ago we were talking about Andy Vyman in the context of being such an important player for Bristol City and one of the top goal scorers in the Championship behind Mitrovic and, one of Bristol City's top 3 players. Are we still having that same conversation about Andy Vyman? Is there the possibility that he can come back and have a season like the one he had a couple of years ago?
You can never rule it out, because I didn't see that 20 plus goal season coming with Vyman. So he is a natural finisher. He showed that, and he massively benefited. But I think we've slightly changed the way we play now, and I think we've slightly accommodated to our defence, because rightly so, Andy Vyman scored loads of goals in that season, but we were horrendous at the back, like properly awful. We couldn't defend, and that kind of got tweaked, and now we're better defensively, which kind of meant that the attack has not been as good. But if he's on form, he's more than capable of scoring 15 goals in a season and really helping. His versatility, again, he can play as a 10, he can play as a natural 9, he can play on the wing, and if needed, he can play as an 8. Not great, but he can still play as an 8. So I think he'll kind of be moved around for a lot of the season. I'm not sure he's going to start come Preston, but if he's on form, he's easily capable of scoring 15 goals in a Championship season.
Let's hope that's the case. Dave, we've touched on Bristol City's defensive struggles from previous seasons. Obviously made some progress in that respect last year, but you still had injury issues to the likes of Rob Atkinson. And I just feel like it feels like a while from an outside perspective since Bristol City have had a really consistent, reliable defence. And I Yeah, I'm inclined to go back to the League One season under Steve Cottrell, where you had Luke Ayling, Aidan Flint, and Derek Williams that were just a really consistent back three. I can't, perhaps you'll tell me I'm wrong, but I don't feel like you've had that too often in the intervening 8 years or so.
No, we haven't. I think, we go back a few seasons when we had Webster and Callas together, but it was for one season. And even then, we still shipped a hell of a load of goals. So we might have had a consistent partnership, but we still conceded goals. So I certainly saw last season a massive improvement. And that kind of comes across the whole of the team as well in terms of, defending from the front. And I don't think it's any secret for Nigel Pearson that he's after, powerful and quick players up front so that we can start to press from high up the pitch and put less pressure on our own defence. I think the other transition that we've made is moving away from a predominantly counter-attacking side the season before, which is probably one of the reasons why Vyman was so successful in terms of linking up with Semenyo and Martin to I'm not going to say a possession-heavy side. We're certainly never going to be like a Burnley or a Swansea, but we are definitely moving towards a team that likes to have a bit more control of the ball. And I think that's also takes some pressure off the defence. And then I think, we've had, we have had injuries, and yet we've still, the second half of last season, we didn't concede that many goals really. And a lot of time we were playing Pring at left centre back. We've had people like George Tanner come in and he signed the season before, but last season was his first kind of proper season, and looks more than adequate enough. Right backs they're all steady right backs. They're never flashy, are they? Like left backs. But he's come in and done a good job there. I think McCrory will add in. So I think we've got options. I think it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. We still don't know about Thomas Callas at this point. I'm assuming he is gone and he's not going to come back and say, yeah, I'll take that offer that you've put on the table. So I think we might look to bring someone in there. But we're signing Rob Dickey and Zach Viner. I think that's our kind of two starters. I think, we might see in the early parts of the season, we might see Cal Naismith playing back there as well.
I've heard he's linked. I've heard Cal Naismith's been linked with like Wrexham or other.
That did the rounds end of last week. I don't know. I haven't heard anything in it. The only thing I heard that was quite interesting was someone was using it at Wrexham to work out who the mole was. So I don't know, but I would be really surprised if you went somewhere like Wrexham.
Right, okay. Well, we'll see. But I mean, it's interesting, Annie, because Dave mentioned Zach Viner there. Was he a bit of an unlikely hero for Bristol City last season?
Yeah, he was. I was really surprised, actually. He started, I think, at Holloway, wasn't it, Dave? First game last season? He started, didn't he? Yeah. But he apparently really impressed Nigel in pre-season last year. Got a start against Hull. Hasn't really looked back since. It's been really solid. Everything we could criticise Zach Viner of, he's got that mistake in him. His position's a bit. He's not really a leader on the pitch. He's improved all of that. He's shown to be a really good leader. He's, as Dave mentioned, we've had to kind of move around people on centre back. We've changed from a back three to two centre backs. He's been one of them consistently most weeks, and that's, I think, a testament. He's been really, really good. He's been really solid, and at championship level, that's what you want, really. And him being there most weeks, most games, is probably one of the reasons why our defence improved so much. His leadership qualities are just brilliant. I didn't know he had it in him, but it's really good to see. And hopefully that kicks on and he really pushes. Really helps us push next season.
Absolutely. Fevs, I've felt a couple of times in the last couple of seasons that Bristol City are lacking a bit of energy and dynamism in midfield with the likes of Andy King and Matty James, who are both on the older side. Obviously, Alex Scott, certainly in the case of when Alex Scott leaves. So I'm wondering, is there any likelihood of Joe Williams being able to find some fitness this year?
Well, I think last season, I can't remember which game it was, he got injured, in the back end of the season, but he'd been available for every single game last season, albeit carefully managed by the management team. And I think he's one of those players as well that when he has played, he's the one that kind of was bringing that energy if we played him perhaps alongside Matty James and then maybe Alex a bit further forward. So yeah, definitely he resembled a bit more of the kind of Joe Williams that we saw at Bolton, Barnsley, who was the other team he was at, and Wigan. He looked a bit more like that player, although you still think is he kind of managing himself as well, even if that's kind of mentally. So I think he's got a big season ahead of him. Not saying that necessarily means he'll have a great season, but final year of his contract, definitely fitter than he was certainly the first 2 years he was here. And I think he's got a part to play. So I'm hoping so. I think if we get Jason Knight, which looks to all intents and purposes like it's a done deal, then that gives us even more legs in there as well. And I think we just have to wait and see what happens with Alex Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting point that you made earlier, Dave, that Nigel Pearson does like really athletic, strong runners in his team, especially in terms of the press, because what you get with Jason Knight, Annie, is someone who's just an absolute monster in the press. He's just one of these athletes that can just go all game, and that makes him a really exciting signing, I think.
No, I totally agree, and he's probably not someone who's going to score many goals, but as you say, the engine room in midfield is massively required with Joe Williams not being fit for the most of his time here and not being a consistent starter and uncertainty over Alex Scott's future. I think Jason Knight brings valuable experience, valuable qualities, and he's made so many appearances for Derby in the Championship and in League One, and he's just proven to be a really, really solid player. Can also play right back if needed. So honestly, good deal, and for the price, I think we're paying about $2 million. Pretty good financially as well. And yeah, I just genuinely think this is a very good deal and adds again more numbers into centre midfield. So if we have any injury problems, we should be fine there.
Yeah, I think what it does, it allows us to rely less on having to play Matty James 90 minutes every week. If you can give him a rest at some point, then fantastic. Means you don't have to play Andy King as much. And admittedly, Andy King came in and did a good job for us last season, but he's on the slope in terms of his career. And I think the other thing is we ended up having to play Omar Taylor-Clark for half a dozen games as well. And no disrespect to him, he's coming in. He was on loan at Yate Town in the Southern League at the start of last season, and he's come in and he's applied himself well, but he's not at that point where he's going to influence games like any of the others. And at some point at the back end of the season, we were playing with Andy King and Omar in the middle of the park, and it served us okay, but it wasn't. It's not going to take you into a playoff challenge this season. I think that's really where we're looking to do. We're hopefully got a deeper squad without necessarily increasing numbers too much. And what we've done is probably take a little bit of reliance out of having to play some of the youngsters as much as we did last season.
On the other hand, Annie, I felt like what led to, I want to call it a decline, although that's probably a little bit harsh, but certainly towards the back end of the Lee Johnson reign, where one of the mistakes I felt Bristol City made was they signed a lot of experienced players on big wages and loaned out a lot of the top talent to sort of League Two level, when actually I felt like possibly the thing to do would have been to have a really strong first 11 and then sort of blood the youngsters into a core of sort of 15, 16 senior players today. So what is that process looking like for Bristol City now? And is there some talent coming through that can make a difference?
No, I totally agree. I think we signed players on big wages from the Premier League, or just players towards the back in their career, hoping that they'd make an impact for a season or two and then leave and help us push to the Premier League. That wasn't what made us successful, and that wasn't what helped us progress from about 19th to 8th. That we signed players, or we brought players in from our academy. We signed players for cheap who were young, knowing they'd improve and then sell them on for massive fees. That's what improved us. The moment we went away from that plan, it just kind of derailed from there. Lee Johnson obviously lost his job. But to be honest, if COVID hadn't happened, I don't know what Lee Johnson or that squad in 1920 would have possibly done, because we were in a proper playoff challenge, and then after COVID and just kind of fell off. But yeah,
I'm sure if my memory doesn't deceive me, that there was a drop off before COVID happened in terms of form in the second half of the 1920s season.
Yeah, we were on a bad run going into COVID, weren't we? And my honest opinion of that season was our results flattered our performances. I think the season before we'd played better, and even the season before that we'd played better again. I thought results caught up with us in 1920, and we were a bit of a busted flush by the time COVID came, and we didn't really have the greatest of COVID pre-seasons, if there's such a thing, and we came out and we didn't look very good. And Lee Johnson, obviously lost his job. I think just going on through your point to Annie, I think in terms of that kind of academy and pathway, I think it's there for all to see. Last season, we regularly had 4 starters, if not 6 starters, come from the academy. We regularly had 8, 9, or 10 in the match day squad.
That's brilliant.
I did, and there's no team in the championship that's got that many. There's a couple of teams who do, produce, well from their academy, like Blackburn, etc. But those numbers are phenomenal. Albeit, I would say that some of it's down to the fact that we had injuries elsewhere, and I think this season going forward, we probably might not see the same numbers. But luckily, there's 2 more sub spots this year, so I think we will. We will, but maybe not see as many minutes from them. So I think that's really good. And there's a load coming behind that as well, Gab, as well. So
really, positive. Anyone you're particularly excited about?
Beneath the kind of current group that have come through, yeah. So there's 2 young centre backs that I really like. There's one called Raf, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it. So sorry, Raf, if you're listening. Raf Areoye. If that's wrong, apologies. And then we've got who's last summer when I saw him, he played a couple of the first team pre-seasons. He looked like Lloyd Kelly, left-sided centre back, and this year he's filled out, and he looks an absolute monster. So he's the left side centre back, and then we've got a right-sided centre back called Jamie Knight-Labelle, who's a Canadian under-20 international. I think he was 17 last year, so he's probably coming up to 18 now. And he just looks so calm and composed as well. So those are 2 centre backs coming through, and then there's a few other ones as well. I think there's a young striker called Seb Palmer Holden, who kind of travelled with the first team squad. He's been over to Austria as well. He looks like he's another one who's got a chance to break through. Maybe not this season. Probably needs a loan this season. National league
sort of level.
Maybe EFL if someone's willing to take the punt. He did go out to Yeovil last season, but they were having terrible time at the time when Mark Cooper first took over, and he only played a couple of games, and then we brought him back, and we also brought back Josh Hours as well. He'd been out on loan there at the same time, so that probably wasn't the greatest loan, but no, it's looking promising. I think the one thing is, the clubs move forward in terms of, the standards are higher to now get in the first team. So the fact that these young players are looking like they might, have a future here shows how well the academy's doing, and actually the academy's kind of up to its levels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think National League is a decent level, a decent starting point, and I think if you can do well at that level, then I think the gap gets smaller. Whereas I think if you go down, if the first loan's at a National League South or anything below that, then the worry, I suppose, is that it can become quite a big gap to sort of bridge. So hopefully that can continue to happen. Annie, who were the ones that Dave mentioned there, that there was a high volume of academy graduates that got into the squad last season? Who were the ones that really, beyond the obvious, I suppose, that really sort of impressed you and grabbed their opportunity?
I think Sam Bell has been patient for a while. I remember last season, the season before, where we all went, "Oh, this might be his chance. Give him a few games. If he's not up to it, he's not up to it." Nigel didn't really give him that chance, but the previous season he's been absolutely brilliant. He's proven to be a really good squad player. There's still some question marks, but to be honest, I think on the wing he's a pretty decent player. And to be honest, I think he can really kick on next season. Can really improve and lock down a place in the squad and try and get minutes off the bench, if not starting. Dave mentioned Omar Taylor-Clark, and I think it was Blackpool at home towards the back end of the season where he made his debut, and he came on and he really caught my eye. Really, I think he was quite good, had a good passing range, and then made a start away at Swansea, and again did fairly well. So if you can, I know this is going to sound strange, but he was bang average, but bang average in a good way. And I think that's kind of what.
Well, I think it's kind of when you get young players like that are making such a big step up. It's really just a case of getting a feeler for things and having a few nice touches, and you're not really asking too much from them at that point, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And he adapted to that role really well, and got a really good reception from the fans, and it was just good to see. And I'd say Sam Bell and Omar Taylor-Clark, I think they were pretty good last season. They got the chance, whatever reasons, injuries or just generally good enough to make the step. But I thought they did quite well.
Yeah, Dave, I was expecting Sam Bell to go out and loan to Cheltenham in January because I think he was quite heavily linked with them at the time. But he's been around the squad for a while. If memory serves, he made his debut against Birmingham off the bench 3 seasons ago now, I think it was. And he's obviously quite highly thought of, partly because of family links and that kind of thing. Could this be a big year for Sam Bell, do you think?
Yeah, it could well be. I think he surprised me a little bit, if I'm being honest. Although, if you go back to that 3 seasons ago when he made his debut, he got his chance before Tommy Conway. So, I'm not sure kind of the reasoning behind that, but he probably was seen as the first choice out of those players to come in at that point. And unfortunately, he ripped his hamstring in his first start against Stoke the following game, and that obviously set him back. And Tommy Conway comes in, and last year Tommy, spent most of the season on the bench, season before, spent most of the minutes on the bench, not really getting a chance. But he kind of bided his time. And then last pre-season, he took it. And I think that's probably what Sam Bell needs. He's made a really encouraging start for us. Got a good few goals as well, and he probably needs a good pre-season to push himself in front of other players. I think him and Anis Mehmeti are going to have a, if we do play that front three, are going to have a really good battle this season, keeping each other on their toes.
Different types of players, I would say as well. I think Anis Mehmeti is a very agile operator who can just get a delivery in with a very clever piece of skill. Whereas I think Sam Bell seems like more of a direct type that's going to hit it and run and then get it across that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very, very different. I guess that's probably what you need, isn't it? You need different keys to unlock certain doors in the game as well. I think that's where we've got that kind of flexibility across that front three. Even on the other side, we've got the more kind of dribbly Mark Sykes, albeit he can run as well. And then you've got a slightly more ungainly but more physical Harry Cornick as well. So I think we've got different options there to suit how we're trying to play or the state of the game as well, which is maybe something we've not really had over the last 2 seasons. We've been hit when we've got injuries to key players like Naismith and Matty James and Joe Williams. Then that's when we've tended to struggle, and the results kind of bear that out as well. Last season we had an 8-game unbeaten run and a 13-game unbeaten run, and most of that was because we had the majority of our key players fit. And that's, I think, what Nigel's trying to do this summer, is to get more key players into the squad, so that actually we're not weakened when we have to replace, and that might be through injury, it might be through rest, it might be through suspension or whatever. So
Yeah, well, let's hope that's going to be the case. Annie, Dave mentioned Mark Sykes there, and I feel like Sykes is at his best. Although he can dribble, as Dave mentioned, he's also quite good in terms of just finding space, and just sometimes if there's like an early forward pass to play, he's quite good at picking that one. And I like that he doesn't try and attack the central areas too early, because he's sometimes quite happy to stay wide and then let someone else go in on the underlap and then play the pass there, which I quite like. And if you can add the dribbling element to that, then I don't know, is there a possibility that Mark Sykes could really come on this year?
Yeah, and I think Sykes last season surprised me, and I think surprised a lot of people when he started that many games. And to be honest, I think he's proven to be a really really useful player, because if something isn't going right in a game, we want to change system or want to change personnel, he can happily just slot straight back into right back or right wing back, and he's equally as effective there. So to be honest, I think Mark Sykes has really got a role to play this season, with rest and injuries and suspensions and whatnot. I think he's going to be a massive player for us, and I think he's going to be a player that's relied upon in a lot of games. And with his attributes, I think he's going to be a really important player for us. So yeah, I'd keep an eye on Mark Sykes, because picking someone on a free transfer from a lower league, you'd normally go, not really sure about this, but to be honest, that's really really good piece of business from City. So yeah, I'd make sure that Mark Sykes is getting as many minutes as possible, because he's so far proven to be a really good player in this system. And even if we tweak a few things, I think he can be a really good player next season as well.
I mean, on that then, Fevs, I feel like I was actually quite excited last season about the possibility of the relationship between Mark Sykes and Kane Wilson. Obviously, that didn't quite come to fruition as I'd hoped for various reasons. Is there a possibility that George Tanner maybe can link up a partnership with Sykes next year, or are you expecting to recruit another right back?
I think from what Nigel said, Ross McCraw is going to be the competition for George Tanner at right back. So I think whoever we see there will be likely with someone like Mark Sykes in front of him. And I thought Tanner kind of does link quite well with Sykes, but Sykes is the one who's going to go on, and I think George plays a bit more conservatively there. And I think that's probably something that he needs to develop in his game and maybe make those runs beyond, like Campering does on the other side. And it's quite often it's Campering bursting onto the ball inside the fullback rather than the left winger doing that to an extent. So yeah, I sound quite easy really on terms of who those combinations are going to be at this point. But I think another thing about McCrory is he can run all day as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he does get to get ahead of Tanner, then what kind of he offers as well, because I think he won't be one who'll be shy in trying to bomb forward.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Campering there, Annie. Yeah, what do you think the season holds for him?
No, he's going to be our starting left back, and he's going to be hopefully have a good season. He's last season was absolutely brilliant for him. His attacking runs were brilliant. I remember Birmingham at home, and he was sorry, Gap. He was brilliant. He was yeah. I genuinely didn't think he had that in him. I knew he was a good attacking player, but those long bursting runs were just absolutely brilliant. And to be honest, we've mentioned we've obviously been linked to Joe Bryan, who's now joined Millwall, but a lot of fans going, well, what about Joe Bryan? But I think, to be honest, on this system, I think Campering is probably better suited to balance out George Tanner. And yeah, I think he's going to be a really, really important player for us this season. And yeah, I think he's definitely good enough to give another season of development. And yeah, I think Campering's going to be a big player for us. And I don't know, subject to some interest from higher up, and you never know, we could cash in on another player. I think it's generally him and Tommy Conway are probably the next two players who are going to be our next, key asset to give
and just to explore that as well, you kind of want to give your Prings and your Conways, Dave, that space to grow, because I feel like signing Jay Bryan, who might be a little bit better than Cam Pring, but certainly not much better in terms of current ability. Cam Pring's got a good 5-6 years on him, so you want to develop the next Jay Bryan. You don't want to just continually be harking back to players who've done well for you in the past.
Yeah, I do wonder with Joe Bryan whether he was maybe brought to play, or have we signed him to play somewhere else and maybe play on the left side of midfield, or maybe in a central midfield position as well. He played there a little bit with us when he was first here, as well as obviously playing a lot of left back and a lot of left wing back as well. So I other than that, I think it would have been, we're just going to have two really, really good left backs who are going to have to fight it out, which is probably not the worst thing in the world. But I think, I probably would have, much as I'd love Joe Bryan to come back, I was really up for it. I think let's try and find the next Cam Pring is the right approach for us to take in our current kind of setup. And I think that's why we've gone and got Hayden Roberts. So, as soon as it looked like the Joe Bryan deal was off, we were straight in on Roberts. And, the rumour from the training ground is he's looked really, really good in pre-season. So I think he's going to push Cam as well, which is all good.
Yeah, and he can Hayden Roberts, and he can play centre back as well, and he, as well as left back, and he can play left of a back three. So there's the option of going to a back three at certain points in games, and maybe moving Cam Pring to the left wing back role.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Hayden, I think Hayden Roberts really impressed Derby last season. I obviously didn't watch him many times, but I think I've heard that he's probably better off at left centre back than he is at maybe a left back. I'm not sure, Gab.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah, he's certainly not really one that's going to rampage forward so much, but he's a very solid defender. You'll be pretty reliable having him on the back post, but from cross into the box. But also, he's very progressive as well. So I think left of a three, I think he could do well, and maybe even as a centre back in a four. So I think that versatility could go a long way, along with Rob Dickey signing, which I think he's shown himself to be a good defender at this level previously. So hopefully he can do that. Fevs, I've got a couple of questions for both of you, really. Who's the more optimistic Bristol City fan, do you reckon, that I could go for the more positive question?
I don't know which one of us is, to be honest.
We'll go to Annie then. What will be when I make my 1 to 24 predictions for the championship? What will be the reason for me to be massively positive about Bristol City and say yes, they could really challenge for the playoffs this season?
Well, we've recruited so far positively, and we've acted early in the market, given a lot of time to our players in pre-season. We've shown under Nigel Pearson we've changed from probably a lower tier side to a more fluid, more attackingly capable, more balanced overall side. And to be honest, the quality is already there in the squad to really try and push. And with the additions we've made, I think that's only room for improvement, really. And we've got youngsters in the squad who've got massive ceilings. Tommy Conway, Cam Pring, and also recruited Hayden Roberts, again, another youngster who can improve. And I think we've got a lot of players there who can make that step up or have done it before at this level. And we've got a manager who's done it at this level before, won the title with Leicester. So I think there's a recipe there for a solid playoff push, at least. And to be honest, I'd put us up there near the top half, or in the top half at least, and trying and pushing on for that playoff position.
Okay, well, coming to you then, Dave, what would be the reason for me to be slightly more cautious about Bristol City and say this could be another tricky bottom half finish and maybe towards the bottom of the bottom eight, or the middle eight, sorry?
Yeah, it's probably not what I think, but I think, injuries will be one affecting squad depth. Second one would be Alex Scott does go and he's irreplaceable. And I think he is irreplaceable in terms of the way he plays. I'm not sure he's irreplaceable in terms of kind of the team structure. I think we can, some of the parts and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I think those would be two. I guess I'm making up stuff now, really, Gav. But Tommy Conway's a one-season wonder. Again, I don't think that. So I think those are the kind of things that I guess perhaps the neutral or the outsider who probably doesn't watch as much of these players as what we do might think, oh yeah, And I think the other thing is I'm going to, and it's probably going to wince now, is looking at things like, well, Tommy Conway only scored 9 goals last season, but he scored those in just over 2,000 minutes. So he was being, gradually, moved into the team, and not being overexposed, etc. And I think he's ready to fly. So
is there a world then, Dave, where Tommy Conway has a similar season in terms of productivity to Alex Scott last year?
Do you know what? It's kind of probably a bit perverse, but I almost think that Tommy Conway, if he has a good season, will have more of an effect on our team and where we finish than maybe Alex Scott, because I think, strikers score goals, don't they? And goals win matches. And so, Alex Scott can do all the prompting and the probing behind, but it's probably going to be someone like Tommy Conway's goals that earn us points. So, yeah, quite possibly he could be that big for us. Well, I really rate him. I think he's a great player.
Yeah, well, that's so exciting, and hopefully, if he can start regularly next season, he could have a really special season. Listen, gents, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your time talking about Bristol City. Really enjoyed this one. Annie, what are your plans for AH Robins Talk on the YouTube next season?
Just match previews, reviews, hopefully go to more games, and matchday vlogs bring you the experience, and hopefully it's a nice more wins than draws and losses, but we'll see about that. But yeah, just general content about most games, and that'll be it from AH Robins Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you give it a subscribe. Likewise, Dave, you got some plans to get some data graphics up for next season and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, vises and more vises. Probably, I guess once the season comes on, it'll be less about player stuff because the transfer window's open, and probably a little bit more of a focus on probably, how different are City this season to last season? What are the good bits? What are the bad bits? What are the trends I can see? That's probably where I'll put a little bit of focus, certainly in the opening months, and then be another transfer window, and it'd be vises and more vises again, won't it? So.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll go follow Fevs Football on Twitter for all of that good stuff. Gents, thanks so much for your time. Thanks to you for watching at home. Pleasure. This has been EFL Debate, the Bristol City Summer Deep Dive with Dave Fevs and Annie Harish, and we'll see you again very soon.